In the small, sleepy village of Ashwood, life moved at a slow and predictable pace. The villagers knew each other by name, and the most exciting event of the year was the annual harvest festival. But all that changed one foggy morning when the body of Samuel Granger, the owner of the old mill, was found lying lifeless on the cold stone floor of his workplace. The mill, a towering structure of weathered wood and creaking machinery, stood on the edge of the village, near the river. It had been the heart of Ashwood for generations, providing flour and work for the villagers. Samuel Granger, a gruff but well-respected man, had run the mill for over 30 years. His sudden death sent shockwaves through the community. The discovery was made by Thomas, the miller's young apprentice. He had arrived early that morning to start the day's work, only to find Samuel's body slumped near the grinding stones. There was a deep wound on the back of his head, and a bloodied wrench lay nearby. The local constable, a kind but inexperienced man named Mr. Higgins, was quickly overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation. He sent for help from the city, and within hours, Detective Inspector Charles Whitaker arrived in Ashwood. Detective Whitaker was a man of sharp intellect and keen observation. He had a reputation for solving even the most baffling cases, and his arrival brought a glimmer of hope to the frightened villagers. After examining the scene, Whitaker concluded that Samuel had been struck from behind, likely by someone he knew and trusted. The wrench, a common tool at the mill, suggested that the killer had acted in the heat of the moment. The detective began his investigation by interviewing those closest to Samuel. First was Eleanor Granger, Samuel's wife. She was a quiet, frail woman who had been married to Samuel for 25 years. She claimed to have been at home the entire night, but her nervous demeanor raised Whitaker's suspicions. Next was Thomas, the apprentice. The young man was visibly shaken and insisted he had no reason to harm Samuel, who had been like a father to him. However, Whitaker noticed a faint bruise on Thomas's arm, which the boy claimed was from an accident at the mill. The third suspect was Jacob Hale, a rival mill owner from the neighboring village. Jacob had long been envious of Samuel's success and had publicly argued with him just days before the murder. Jacob denied any involvement, but his alibi was shaky at best. Finally, there was Martha, the Grangers' housemaid. She was a sharp-tongued woman who had worked for the family for years. She claimed to have been visiting her sister in the next town over, but Whitaker couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. As the investigation deepened, Whitaker uncovered a web of secrets and grudges. Samuel had been a strict and demanding man, and not everyone in the village had fond memories of him. The detective also learned that Samuel had recently changed his will, leaving the mill to Thomas instead of his wife. This revelation cast a new light on Eleanor's behavior, as she stood to lose everything if the will was executed. One evening, as Whitaker was reviewing his notes, he noticed a small detail he had overlooked. The bloodied wrench found at the scene had a faint engraving on its handle, a single letter M. This clue led him to Martha, whose full name was Martha Miller. Confronted with the evidence, Martha broke down and confessed. She had been stealing money from the Grangers for years, and Samuel had discovered her theft just days before his death. Fearing exposure, she had followed him to the mill that night and, in a fit of rage, struck him with the wrench. With the case solved, the village of Ashwood slowly returned to its peaceful ways. But the memory of the murder at the mill lingered, a reminder that even in the quietest of places, darkness could lurk beneath the surface. Detective Whitaker left Ashwood with a sense of satisfaction, knowing he had brought justice to Samuel Granger and closure to the villagers. Yet, as he boarded the train back to the city, he couldn't help but wonder what other secrets lay hidden in the shadows of the old mill.